With two first round picks, the New York Giants have added Jackson Dart and Abdul Carter, but Dart might not be the starter at the beginning of the year. It looks like it's going to be Russell Wilson at least for a bit. Maybe a little bit of Jameis Winston before we do eventually see Jackson Dart by the end of the season. Giants have some really solid players on their team. I think Abdul Carter is going to be scary. You got Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence on the defense as well. And on the offensive side of the ball, obviously Malik Neighbors had an incredible rookie season. I think the Giants are going to be an interesting team to watch, but probably still not very good this year. Still a ways to go to rebuild this franchise. First up is going to be a road trip to the Commanders. Washington made the NFC Championship game last season before getting blown out by Philadelphia. I do think the Commanders are still going to be a ridiculously good team this year. Jaden Daniels entering his second season in the league, and I think that he's going to have another really good year. His rookie season was pretty incredible to watch. I think the Commanders are going to pull off a pretty easy win to start out the season.
And it's back-to-back road games after the loss to the Commanders, this time against another NFC East opponent in the Dallas Cowboys. And Dallas made some moves to bolster their offense, acquiring George Pickens from the Steelers in a trade, as well as drafting Tyler Booker in the first round of the NFL draft. And the passing game is going to be very strong this year, pretty typical of a Cowboys offense in the Dak Prescott era, but the running game is going to be the biggest concern with it consisting of Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and two rookie running backs. It's going to be a little interesting to see how this offense functions as a whole, most likely leaning on the pass game once again, and maybe that turns them pretty one-dimensional. But the Giants do lack a very successful secondary, and I think teams with a good passing attack are going to take advantage, and the Cowboys certainly have that. And defensively, the Cowboys are absolutely loaded, even if some guys are coming off injuries. The only person you really need is Micah Parsons coming off the edge, and I really don't see how the Giants will get a win at AT&T Stadium, dropping to 0-2 to start the season.
And then it continues to stay difficult as they have to face both the Chiefs and the Chargers at home. Patrick Mahomes obviously is a great quarterback, and facing the Chiefs in prime time, I think, is a disservice to prime time. This one's going to be brutal to watch. Giants get absolutely obliterated. And then it's Jim Harbaugh and the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert, really good quarterback. We saw a really impressive rookie season from Lad McConkey last year. It'll be fun to see him and Malik Neighbors competing head to head, although they won't be on the field at the same time. In the end, just kind of like the Chiefs. Obviously, the Chargers aren't quite as good as Kansas City, but they're still way better than the Giants. They're going to be 0-4 to start the season.
And then we get to the first game of the season where I think the Giants actually have a chance. I believe they are currently favored in this game against the Saints, even though it is on the road. And that is just because the Saints are going to be absolutely horrendous next year. The quarterback room is made up of Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shuff, and someone that I've never heard of before that is likely not even in the conversation. The really only major contributors on offense will be Alvin Kamara, who's going to be the focal point of the offense, Chris Olave, who has dealt with several concussions, and really, I don't know if he is the same wide receiver when he was originally drafted. And the offensive line still will be pretty decent. Defensively, they have some big names like Tyrann Mathieu, Cam Jordan, and Demario Davis, but those guys are going to get very little offensive help. I think this is one of the only games on the Giants schedule where they are the better team on both sides of the ball. I think at this point, whoever the quarterback is, whether they switch to Jameis Winston or Jackson Dart, will be able to lead the Giants to a win because they have a decent amount of weapons that they can use, mostly being Malik Neighbors. But They have Cam Scadaboo. Maybe they work him into the offense somehow. Tyrone Tracy towards the end of the season was a solid running back, at least at times. And they have a couple other role players that they can use in the wide receiver department, like Wandale Robinson or Darius Slayton. All in all, the Giants will get in the win column in week 5 against the pitiful Saints before facing the Eagles in a short turnaround on Thursday night. And the defending champs are one of the best teams in the NFL once again, somehow getting better through the draft, getting Jahad Campbell and Andrew Makuba on the defense, a starting free safety, and another linebacker to add to the depth chart. There's really just no way I see the Giants getting a win, especially when Saquon Barkley is on the Eagles. Even though he had his revenge game last season, I don't see him stopping anytime soon. Even though this Giants defensive line is looking like it will be pretty solid, it's not going to matter when you're going up against the reigning offensive player of the year.
And then it's a road trip to Denver. And the Broncos going to be really solid once again. We saw a great rookie season from Bo Nix, and the running back room also looking pretty solid. Brought in J.K. Dobbins, and they drafted R.J. Harvey, who we did a short on a while back, and he was actually one of the better running backs in college football last year out of UCF. I think he's going to turn out very well in Denver. And then obviously on the defensive side of the ball, you got Patrick Surtain, your lockdown corner. Broncos are going to be really good. I'm very excited to see that matchup of Surtain against Neighbors. Just realistically, there's no way that the Giants win this game. And then I'm not going to harp on it too much because Connor just talked about the Eagles going on the road to Philadelphia. Yeah, not happening. Giants drop to 1-7 there.
Then they welcome the 49ers, and that's a long road trip for San Francisco. And I really don't know what to expect from the 49ers next season because they have dealt with so many injuries to their roster over the past couple of years, particularly with key players like Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk, but they still have very good players on their team, like Nick Bosa, like George Kittle, and as they are hoping, like Brock Purdy, who they just gave an absolute bag to in this offseason. Does that maybe cause some problems down the road when you inevitably have to sign some of those key players? Yes. I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing right now because Brock Purdy has proven himself to be a solid quarterback in the NFL. But I do think there are going to be some issues with this 49ers team because Brandon Ayuk still doesn't look like he wants to be in San Francisco after he demanded a trade last year. And outside of him, the wide receiver room is kind of thin. Juwan Jennings occasionally has a massive game, but it's not really a reliable wide receiver. And Ricky Pearsall, in his second year in the league, I don't think is ready to take on such a big workload. And if Christian McCaffrey still has injuries he's dealing with, I don't know if this 49ers offense is going to be able to deal with a Giants defense that has a lot of promising young talent. I think the Giants can pull off an upset here against the 49ers. It's going to be a uphill battle for sure because there's so many good players on this 49ers team, particularly on defense with Fred Warner, probably the best linebacker in the NFL. But I do think there is a chance the Giants can pull off this upset, however much of a long shot it can be. They go on the road the following week to face the Chicago Bears, and the Bears have a lot of high hopes going into next season, getting Ben Johnson to be their next head coach after being an offensive mastermind at Detroit. Drafted Luther Burden in the early second round to add to the wide receiver room alongside DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, along with getting Colston Loveland to pair with Cole Kmet. It really just comes down to can the defense generate enough of a pass rush to be a dominant defense like we've seen in past years for the Bears? And I don't think it will be that good, but the secondary has made some strides forward, and I think the linebackers will be as good as ever. And I do think in his second year, Caleb Williams will have a chance to do what no other Bears quarterback has done and throw for 4,000 passing yards with the amount of weapons he has, with a head coach that is offensive minded. I do think the Bears are the more complete team here compared to the Giants, especially coming off of a upset win over the 49ers. I think the Bears will be able to get the job done at home here and defeat the Giants, dropping them to 2-8.
Next up is the Bears' rivals in the Packers. Jordan Love, again, really good quarterback that these Giants have to face. The Packers finally drafted a wide receiver, so they have some weapons for Jordan Love to throw to now. I think the offense is going to be really good once again. The question marks come on the defensive side of the ball. So maybe Malik Neighbors able to get a good amount of receiving yards this game. Around this point, we could maybe even be seeing Jackson Dart a little bit in this Giants offense. I think that the Giants overall have a really good chance to pull off this upset, and it may shock a lot of people, but that's exactly what we have them doing. The Packers, yes, they're a fringe playoff team, and we have the New York Giants pulling off their third win of the season at home against Green Bay before a road trip to Detroit. And this time, I don't think it's going to happen. The Lions are just way too good. They're going to be up there in contention for a one seed in the NFC along with the Eagles. I don't see any possibility for the Giants to go on the road and win this game. I think that'll pretty easily drop them to 3-9.
The next matchup is a very intriguing one on the road against the Patriots. Drake May entering his second year after originally riding the bench for the first half of the season before eventually coming in and looking like a very good quarterback. And the Patriots helped him out by getting Will Campbell in the NFL draft with their top 10 pick, a huge addition to this offensive line. And then, as an added bonus, they got arguably the best blocker out of the running backs in Trevion Henderson, who can be an elite weapon out of the backfield for Drake May. The wide receivers, they did get Stephon Diggs, even though he's getting a little bit older, still has some value to his name. The rest of the wide receiver room, not going to be that great, but I definitely think Drake May can make some strides forward. And I think this Patriots team is going to be kind of sneaky next year. I don't think they'll compete for the AFC East title because the Bills pretty much have that on lock, but I do think the Patriots will be pretty competitive against some teams. And against the Giants, I do think they will outclass them a little bit, especially with a secondary that has a lot of young guys that just didn't get a lot of chances to play in the previous seasons, whether it was due to injuries or just being too young. I think this year we will see a lot of those guys break out, and the Patriots will become a much better team than we saw them in previous seasons, defeating the Giants here, dropping them to 3-10 before their bye week.
And after that bye week, it's the Commanders again. Kind of similar to the Eagles earlier. Not going to harp on this one too much. Even though the Giants have them at home this time, they're just so much worse all around than Washington. No way that they win this game. And then it's a home matchup with the Vikings. And I actually think that New York has a slight chance in this one. I think people are overhyping the Vikings a little bit too much this season. JJ McCarthy, you have to remember he has not played a single snap in the NFL. I think he's going to take some time to warm up if he ever does. He may turn out to be a draft bust. By the end of the season, though, I'd expect that he would be playing well enough that they should be able to get this win over the Giants, but certainly don't count them out in this one. We have them dropping to 3-12, but I could easily see this being their fourth win of the season.
And it's a similar story the following week against the Raiders. It is a road trip, which makes it a little bit more difficult rather than hosting the Vikings the previous week. But the Raiders did get a lot better from last season. They got Geno Smith from the Seahawks, drafted Ashton Jeanty, one of the best college football players we've seen in recent memory, have Brock Bowers after a incredible rookie season, arguably had a legitimate chance at winning the Offensive Rookie of the Year last year had it not been for Jayden Daniels leading the Commanders to the playoffs. And I do think there is a chance the Raiders can also be a pretty sneaky team. Granted, the AFC West is probably one of the most competitive divisions out there, especially with the Chiefs taking some steps back. Obviously, they're still very good, but the Chargers, Broncos, and the Raiders have all made strides forward and have made it a lot closer. So I do think the Raiders probably have the Giants beat at most positions. Maybe the defense is a little bit more in the Giants' favor because they have a couple more guys on the defensive line that are pretty good rather than the Raiders really just having Max Crosby, even though Max Crosby is one of the premier defensive linemen in the NFL. Overall, I do think the Raiders get the win here, especially at home. But maybe the Giants have a slight chance here. Maybe some of the guys the Raiders brought in don't pan out entirely. Maybe the offense falls flat. But I do think the promise is there and that the Raiders should get the win over the Giants here. And then to close out the season, it is a home game against the Cowboys. And much like the Commanders and Eagles games that we talked about previously, I do think that the Cowboys just outclass the Giants pretty much everywhere that is important. And that's really just the matchups between the wide receivers and the corners for both teams. I don't think the Giants have the secondary to cover any of the Cowboys wide receivers because they are some of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And then on the opposite side, the Giants really only have Malik Nabers as an elite wide receiver, but the Cowboys have some of the best corners in the NFL as well. Even though Trevon Diggs is coming off of injury, Deron Bland is a interception machine for whatever reason. I really don't see how the Giants can pull off a win against the Cowboys. This would be the one game of their division schedule that I do think they can maybe win just because the Cowboys have some questions and it is at home. But I do think the Cowboys are just going to be the superior team here. So a 3-14 season for the Giants.
Which is the exact same record that they had last year. I do think that they are going to be slightly better, but honestly, this is a pretty tough schedule. It was even hard to find these three wins for the Giants, which is why we have that floor down at 1-16. If you take away the wins against the 49ers and Packers, yeah, it's pretty possible that we could see the Giants only win one game this year. But the ceiling, we got to make it a little bit higher at 7-10. I mean, if Russell Wilson just has an incredible season, then maybe they can get to 7 wins. He probably won't start the whole year, so you have a couple Jameis Winston games in there where, he throws his 4 touchdowns and 4 picks and the Giants win, that kind of a thing. The Vegas over-unders at 5.5. I think we're pretty solidly under that. And it does slightly favor the under, just probably not all the way down to 3 wins where we have it.
Jonah hit all the major points. The Giants have the players on their team to build for the future and maybe become more competitive in the NFC East. But for right now, the schedule is way too difficult, and those young guys just need a lot more time to develop. Is it going to be enough this year for Brian Dable to keep his job after leading the Giants to a playoff appearance a few seasons ago? I don't know if the Giants organization is going to take another 3-14 season as a good reason to keep Dable around, but I do think the potential is there for this Giants team. 7 wins, maybe getting to 8 wins if they do get a win over the Cowboys, like I mentioned at the very end of the season. Maybe that is enough to keep the fans and the organization happy, but it really hinges on who we see consistently playing the quarterback position or who ends up starting each week as the season develops. But thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more of our content, and we will see you in the next video.